we are here to learn. And if we were experts at it, we would never make mistakes and we would be perfect. But the fact that I get to learn and fail and get back up and look at it and say, that was ugly, or that was beautiful. That knowledge has only come from the real connection I found from above. And because of that, I'm able to have a lot more compassion and empathy for myself, because the only person that can heal my hurt is me and somebody upstairs.
Welcome to Heal the Hurt, the podcast dedicated to guiding you on your journey to mental wellness and healing from trauma. Each episode, we delve into the heart of healing, exploring the paths to overcome trauma, regain strength, and reclaim joy in our lives. Whether you're taking your first steps toward recovery or you're well on your way, this is a place for connection, understanding, and real talk about the challenges and triumphs of the healing process. Together, we'll uncover insights, share stories, and embrace the power of resilience. So take a deep breath and let's begin the journey of healing together. This is Heal the Hurt, where your journey of transformation and hope starts now. Hey everybody, welcome to the Heal the Hurt podcast. My name is Chris Wilkins. I'm your host, and I am here with my good friend Kami. We have known each other for several years. We started working in the residential treatment center together, and we've just kept in touch, and we had some really cool experiences working in addiction treatment together and doing ropes course, and we could talk about Lifeline even today. But Kami's a recreational therapist, and I'll give her an opportunity to talk a little bit about that. But I'm so grateful that you guys are tuning in, whether you're watching or listening, whether you're the one who we're speaking with or you're the loved one of that person that we're trying to connect with. Thanks for being here. And so, Kami, thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
We've chatted a little bit about different ideas over the years and this podcast and what you're building, your platform and everything. But take a moment and just introduce yourself to this audience and tell us who you are.
Yeah, definitely. So again, my name's Kami Muhlestein, and I grew up in Morgan, Utah. I'm the youngest of 7 kids. And I loved my childhood. It was so fun. I played softball competitively all growing up. We did live in a town where you left and four-wheeled and played outside until dinner was ready at 5. And I loved that. I loved the freedom of making mistakes and getting back up and having a parent that trusted me even if I wasn't trustworthy at the time. So I appreciate that. And as I've grown up, I went to college at UVU and BYU. I did my associates at UVU and bachelor's at BYU in recreational therapy. And then I just hit 11 years this year as a recreational therapist, which is pretty crazy. I sometimes feel like I don't know anything, and then other times I feel like, man, I have learned a lot over these years, and I'm so grateful for it.
That's awesome. I think back at when we first started working together, and I think so often it was just not that long ago, like a year or two, a couple of years, and it's like 6 or 7 or 8 years or something like that. It's been a lot of time, but some of those memories are so ingrained. And so before we jump into that and the make real connections piece, which I love, what the heck is a recreation therapist?
I think that anybody that goes into recreational therapy, the first month of their degree should be learning their elevator speech of what is a recreational therapist, because over the past 11 years, I have answered that questions numerous times, not only with people that I work with, but my family members. My mom always says, you get paid to play. and that's what a lot of people think we are, but A recreational therapist is somebody that works with individuals of all ages. I've worked with babies all the way up to 80-year-olds, and we use recreation and leisure time as our modality. So I'm a certified and licensed therapist, and what that means is if I work often in a team setting, which I love. I have done a lot of individual. I see the benefit in team because there are certain aspects that some people just don't know how to talk about. They don't know how to talk about their struggles. They're not really sure what is going on internally. But when you put them 40 feet up on a ropes course and you ask them some questions and they're exhausted from getting up there, it opens doors that they couldn't have sitting in a room. And that's something that has been really beautiful to see over the years. I have worked with a lot of different populations. My first population was teenagers on the autism spectrum, and they're very high functioning, which was such a humbling experience. They're brilliant, way smarter IQ than I ever will have. But their social skills and their need for connection is very confusing at first. And because of their brilliancy, they are quick to understand that they don't have those skills naturally, but they can learn them, which is really beautiful. I've worked at the state hospital with teenagers as well, and that was one of my favorite jobs. Those teens and that staff was amazing there. And then with you, we worked with substance abuse at Steps Recovery, and I learned the most about myself there. I grew up a lot there, and I went through a lot personally, and I had a huge support team there. I have worked in like a year or two of different jobs with kids with intellectual disabilities around horses, which has been really beautiful. And I currently do retreats with military families, and I've done that since right before COVID. Mm-hmm. Those retreats, we take about 10 to 15 families, and that's the ages 0 to 80, right? And our whole goal is to unplug and reconnect. And so we will do 2-hour classes that we separate them from parents to teens to youth. But other than that, they are recreating the whole time with each other. And that goes from simply eating meals together, which often they weren't used to playing card games together, to doing a scavenger hunt with their phone, that they do the goofiest things, do the YMCA and surf on top of a table. Nice. To river rafting, horseback riding, different things like that, because we just want them to know that if they come as they are, we'll accept them and we'll teach them the skills to improve their quality of life a little bit more.
That's awesome. That's so cool. As you mentioned that, I remember those times we'd either be at the rope course, we'd river raft. I know you took people to the National Disability Center. Right?
National Ability
Center.
Yeah.
And do different things, winter sports and whatnot. And so just so cool. Yeah. As we're reconnecting, like just remembering some of those experiences where I think we realize in life that we've forgotten how to play.
Right.
We've forgotten how to be.
Right.
And we're in a society, I say sometimes that like it's always go, go, go. And so many people feel guilty that if they're not doing something. Like the concept of being bored, I do not know when is the last time I was bored. It doesn't exist because there's so much going on, you know, so many things. And so just having that invitation to play, as you mentioned, leisure, like to just be and to get creative with play as well.
Right.
And so I remember, many, many times hearing you speak and Pam and different colleagues talk about just being, and then even sitting with the emotions that would come up when we let go of some of the busyness, letting go of like, well, I've got to be doing something. I need to distract and deflect, because as our stuff comes up, we don't know what to do with it. We don't know how to deal with it.
Yeah.
And so often we're looking for these other things, these external time consumers.
I would even say time numbers in a way.
Yeah.
And, you know, over the past few years, it's been really neat the older I get and the more experienced I've become, because I'm still studying recreation and therapy and leisure time and what it really means. And when I was working just a few years ago, I went back to the teenagers on the autism spectrum. And a boy came up to me and said, "Do you teach me recreation therapy so that I don't have to deal with my emotions and I can distract?" And I thought it was such a beautiful question because we missed the boat of educating him of what recreation is and what therapy is and what benefit it is for him. Because none of these clients, patients, beautiful people can take any of us therapists or rec therapists in their pocket. So our goal is to teach them the skills that they can take on their own. And this last year I've been going to schools. I've actually been to about 20 public schools and taught them what rec therapy is. And I broke it down. And recreation, it says to recreate, which is to do something again. And then it has 3 different words that I love. It says to renew, to refresh, to relax. And then that play is that 4th one. And I think, how often do we need that daily? Something to renew, to refresh, to relax? Because we all know that stress cycle. And if we don't have something that pauses that stress cycle, it continues. So I love that recreational therapy adds in not a distraction and not a numbness, but an understanding that I don't have to live in survival or stress mode. I can intentionally choose to release it in whatever way is true for me. Mm-hmm. And that can help the therapy part modify my behavior a little bit, just small adjustments so that I can have a better quality of life.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. There are times where we'll talk about our environment. So in a therapy session, I might be doing work with trauma or serious mental illness or addiction or something that's really intense. Somebody talking through their abuse and things they've witnessed, horrifying things and really, really painful, scary things. And we all have this threshold. We all have this amount that we can kind of tolerate, that we can all handle. And sometimes in life it's slower than other times. And sometimes we, for a variety of reasons, can handle a lot. Doesn't mean it's good or efficient. It might mean that we're numb even. So we can be going on, having a whole lot of chaos going on in our life, and we're not losing it. Not because we're necessarily even capable, but just we're not paying attention to it. You know, it's not resonating, or it's like bouncing off if we're impaired, intoxicated, distracted, focused elsewhere. Anyway, so that, let's call it like our charge level, our battery level almost. So in therapy, sitting with somebody in that space, noticing as that intensity level climbs and it gets higher. I love what you mentioned a moment ago, because it's not that we can just keep pushing through, but it's noticing where we are in the moment. And so I'll use the environment to say, what do you think about, we have a window over to the side. What about what is happening outside? Or what about the paint? Man, what do you think about this color? Who chose this color? What about the drapes or the table or something like that? Or sports is going on, or man, the weather is wild lately. These things that are trivial, that don't matter in the grand scheme of things, but in the moment, they're utilized to distract temporarily, to exhale a little bit, to go, oh. And maybe it's a little bit schemy. Manipulative. The word manipulative gets a bad rap, right? But maybe we're manipulating the brain back in a way where it's, okay, I can exhale some. And now it's like a mini set break if somebody's a weightlifter or exerciser, right? Okay, now I can lean in a little bit more and I can tolerate more. So this person that you were sharing about, it's not so that I can numb out or like avoid. It's I can lean in. I have a greater capacity to lean in to those emotions, feel them, get to know them. Where are they coming from? And what can I do with this?
Yeah.
And so there's this ebb and flow to the journey, of recovery, whether that's mental health things, whether that's traumas, addiction issues, relationship issues, like that ebb and flow of I'm getting to know who I really am. I'm getting to know what my pain is. And what am I learning about that? So beautiful. Now, one of the maybe traditions with the Heal the Hurt podcast has been that people would share a snippet of their story. And sometimes it's intense. Sometimes it's a big thing. Sometimes it's maybe the world thinks it's intense, but the guest is going, no, I got this. It's all like, this is who I am. I'm not worked up about this anymore. But you mentioned where you went to college. And I didn't know this until earlier today that you played college softball. And if you're interested, if you're so willing, I want to invite you into that direction to tell us a little bit about your softball career and whether it's successes or pains, what was your experience?
Yeah, definitely. So I still play softball. I played 3 games last night. I love it. I started when I was 12 years old. I played competitive softball until I was 20. So I had 8 years of it. And what's interesting is my very first tournament, I actually rolled a 4-wheeler 3 weeks before. So I couldn't even play in it.
Wow.
But that's life, whatever. So I played on and off. Well, I played consistently, but on and off with different teams for the first couple years until I found a team named Extreme from 14 to 18. So I played with the same girls. We had a few ebb and flow, but for the majority, it was the same girls those 6 years. And I had an amazing coach. Her name's Jeanette, and then her parents helped, Marcia and Larry, and they had high standards for us. And not only did it help me on the ball field, but it helped me learn to have high standards for myself. I didn't make the best of choices from 14 to 16, but because I consistently had softball, and it wasn't just spring season, it was all year. I had other examples in my life saying, you're better than this. You can make better choices. So competitively, I had amazing coaches. I went to high school, played. I had Kilmer was my coach in high school, and he was the welding shop teacher at Morgan High School. And he was always sliding in his Wrangler jeans, and he just had an incredible demeanor about him. He was very caring and understanding and forward, and I had amazing coaches all growing up. So I decided I wanted to try to get a scholarship for softball. I made a recruiting video and all of these things with my competitive team. And then I actually went to state with my high school team, and there I was recruited by a Division I coach. And he came up to me and said, I watched you play, and I would love for you to come check out our school, and let's make it happen. So I was like, what? My recruiting video didn't really matter, but it was fun to make. And then I went there, and it was very interesting. The first day, orientation day for softball, the seniors came out before coach and everything, and they said, hey, girls, come here for a second. I have one piece of advice before coach comes. And we said, all right, what's up? We're so excited. And their first piece of advice was never listen to coach. And I thought, what? I've always had amazing coaches. I've always trusted them to a point of if they say swing different, I will, and I know it will benefit me. Mm-hmm. So that was a very interesting way to start it off. So I went on and, we had practices, 4-hour practices a day, and then we had to take a certain amount of credits. So it became kind of like a job, but I loved softball and it wasn't bad. And, I didn't really have a poor taste in my mouth for coach at this time. And so after the first year, and it was Division I knew I wouldn't play a ton that first year. I was a freshman. I was just there to learn, and I pinch ran all the time, which is fun. Running bases is probably my favorite part of softball. And after the first year, my coach pulled me aside and said, hey, we have a lot of good people, and there's a lot of good people I'm looking at. So I don't know if you'll travel with our team this next year. And I thought to myself, okay, so are you cutting me or not? And he's like, no, you'll still play, but you'll play home games, and I need you to step it up. And I was like, game on. So, I thought about it. Is that what I want to do or not? And I said, okay, I'm still committed. It was still paying for my school. I love the game. I knew I could step it up. They were really good players. And then about 3 weeks before my sophomore year, he pulled me into his office again and he said, Kami, I think we should go our separate ways. And I remember looking at him and saying, I am so confused. I wish you would have told me this 3 months ago, because in 3 weeks I start another semester of school. And now I got to figure out how to pay for tuition and figure out what I'm going to do with my time. And, that was my job. So now I needed a different job. Anyway, there was a lot of confusing energies and emotions at this time. I actually went and told my brother, and my brother has my back. He was saying some colorful words for his coach. And it was actually really beautiful. I felt very seen and very loved from my brother for doing that. And then I kind of got in a little pit for a little bit. Softball was my life for 8 years. I knew I was good at it. I knew I wasn't the best, but I knew I was good at it, and I knew I had skills. And, I had some friends that had similar experiences, and they went down to JC colleges and played one more year there. And, I considered that, but that really wasn't my journey at the time. And so, yeah, that's my softball experience up to that point. My sister is 6 years older than me, so at that time I was able to play old man softball or slow pitch softball with her, which I had never played fast pitch with her, which was really, really neat. But I was in a funk, and I didn't realize how much of a funk it had took me in until probably the past 5 years, when I've been able to look back and see my choices and see where it's led me. And some of it was great things, and some of it I did out of pain.
Thanks for sharing portions of that. I know athletics is a real big thing for so many people, and there have been guests in the past, and also people we've connected with who sports was life, and people have been able to earn their way out of poverty. People have been able to earn their way out of really scary home environments and circumstances in communities that were dangerous because of some combination of athletic talent and gifts and dedication and hard work and those things. And there have been many times where we've heard people share when that journey came to an end and how devastating that is, because it's so often it's that was the thing, that was the hand out of those other circumstances. And individuals who've said, well, what am I supposed to do now? Like, I don't know who I am. And
right.
So thank you for sharing about that. And I'm gonna just invite listeners, if we'll share Kami's contact info when we get to the end. But if that hits home for you, I'm not even asking her permission, just touch base with her. This is somebody who I've interacted with and just has such a giving heart, a willingness. And you're one of those individuals that, we think when I listen to someone else's story, it's helping them. My experience with you, and to listeners, my experience with Kami is she's getting more out of it than the person who's showing up saying, I need your help. That's one of the gems of this world, one of the people that you want to gravitate toward, because it's not a job to you. It never was, whether it was what you've shared now, but, standing next to each other at the rope course with people hanging, harnessed in 30 feet above us, going, let me down. And we're going, push through it. You got this. And cheering them on and all the different issues that would come up. But yeah, I can sense that. I can sense that emotion. It's right there. I love it.
Thank you.
I love it. For a long time, as long as I feel like I've known you, you've used this phrase, make real connections. And number one, I want to know what that means. And then I want to ask you, what does it do? That's the follow-up question. So what does it mean, make real connections? Like, what is a real connection to you?
Right. Yeah, so like you said, when we worked together, I was my young 20s, and I was actually going through a separation from my first husband. And I was trying to figure out me and him. And I do have a very compassionate heart. And when people are in pain or hurt, I have a short span of anger, but it really goes to why, what happened. A sorrow, like a somber feeling of, man, I feel stuck. And so as I was in a separation as well as working with amazing people, I just kept thinking, why do we get stuck in patterns that don't help us? And my sweet first husband had a lot of behavioral addictions, and it kept him very stuck. And I saw beautiful moments of longing to be out of the chains and longing to be free. And the more that I experienced going through our relationship as well as others, I learned that everybody's trying to make lasting, deep feeling connections. And these addictions and struggles and hits that we get is the desire to seek a real connection. A real connection is something that is lasting and deeper than a validation that comes horizontally. And it is an interesting concept because for me personally, I've noticed that the time I feel really connected is when I look up versus when I look around. And I know everybody's higher power is their own, and that's beautiful. And I, only because of my hurt and pain through getting cut from the softball team to then being in kind of a lull stage of making choices and you know, after marrying my first husband, I thought it was the best option at that time, and it was for my 20-year-old self. And then going through the different pains of not only others' choices, but my choices, realizing that I don't have to be regretful of any of it. I don't. We are here to learn. And if we were experts at it, we would never make mistakes and we would be perfect. But the fact that I get to learn and fail and get back up and look at it and say, that was ugly, mm-hmm. or that was beautiful. That knowledge has only come from the real connection I found from above. And because of that, I'm able to have a lot more compassion and empathy for myself, because the only person that can heal my hurt is me and somebody upstairs. And what's neat is once I've allowed that, then when other people make choices, they hurt me and others every day, right? I hurt others every day because I'm trying and I'm learning. But the beauty is that we're learning. And if we can do those quick, I apologize and I will do better, that is a real connection. I don't need perfect. Mm-hmm. I don't want perfect. That's not real connection to me because I'm not perfect. But the beauty of raw, genuine, real. I love that. I long for that.
There's a vulnerability in that. There's a genuineness and a connection and a realness when we can see others, when we allow them to see us and our flaws. You talked about being an expert and being, I think you said the word perfect. And like we would never make mistakes. And earlier today, somebody I care about shared with me some frustration that it takes so long for us to improve. Like, we're not perfect yet. We're not there yet. Like, why do I keep having to try this? And the analogy was asked, the analogy of throwing the baby out with the bathwater was used. And it hit me, and I'm like, what, man? How do I respond to that? How do I apply that in my own life was like my solution. And because I've been there.
Yeah.
I get there all the time where it's like, I know, like, what's going, like, why isn't this working? You know, and like, how do we not give up?
Yeah.
How do we not quit? And so in my thought process, I'm a dad, I've got kids, and sometimes you wash them and you're like, did I wash you? Like, did you wash your hair? Like, did you brush your teeth? Because it's not, like, I'm not getting the results, you know? Or there are signs that suggest maybe we didn't do the greatest of jobs, right? And so my mind is going to those kinds of things. And it's like, well, maybe you just do another rinse and repeat kind of a thing. And as tedious as that might be, you know, as exhausting as it might be, because not necessarily in that analogy with that specific exercise of washing people, but like, man, I went through the motions. I check. I did all the boxes. Is it okay for me to still be a work in progress? My response is absolutely.
Yeah.
And I shared with this group of fellows today, I blow it all the time. I mess up all the time. I think I know what's right and wrong. I think I know, like, you know, up and down and yes and no and those kinds of things. But it's like, in the moment, we might be running from pain. We might not even be conscious of it. We might be so distracted that we're not paying attention and we're just acting impulsively. And I think we've shared many conversations around the idea of hurt people, that phrase. And it's not an excuse or justification or rationalizing. It's not giving permission. But after the fact, as we maybe investigate, like, where did this come from? Why did this happen? Oh, that's why. Again, we're not excusing it, but understanding the why. Because if we can understand it, then we can try to prevent something moving forward. So that idea of, this is what I'm feeling right now. And going back to recreation, like, and leisure, this is what I'm feeling. This is what's coming up for me. And this is what I want to go do, because this is what I've done to escape. This is how I've escaped in the past. And yeah, that brought consequences that I'm not a fan of, but it worked. In the moment it worked. It made the pain go away.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily that it went away. It's just I wasn't paying attention to it. And during that conversation earlier today, I thought of kind of the joke, and maybe it's not a joke to some, but you know, when I was a young person and I'd say, like, oh, I hurt my knee or something like that. My knee hurts. Or like, and then uncle might say, well, you want me to take that pain away? Let me see your finger, you know, like,
yeah,
you know, that kind of thing. And it's not that you took the pain away, but I wasn't thinking about it anymore because there was worse pain.
Right.
And it's so interesting as I think back to how we as human beings, as adults even, do that to ourselves. Here's the pain. I wasn't supposed to feel this today. Or maybe I was. But here's this thing that's painful. Here's this thing that's hard, and I don't want to pay attention to it anymore. I don't want to feel this miserable. Someone take this away from me. And we know how effective in the moment those things are. Chemicals, behaviors, distractions, food, scrolling, channel surfing, those kinds. I don't even know if channel surfing is a thing anymore, but which
YouTube
app are we
surfing.
using? Yeah, those kinds of things. Swipe, so on and so forth. Even into the things of self-loathing and self-harm, self-destruction. And the reality is just like the analogy of my knee hurts and uncle saying, I'm going to bend your thumb or whatever. Again, we do that. And if we can say, yeah, my knee hurts, but let me figure out what it's really all about. Did I crash? Is it broken or fractured? Is there an injury that I need to get looked at and treated properly?
Yeah.
Or is it something that's ice and rest and, something like that? And our hearts are no different than those physical pains. And we go, I was disappointed. I was cut. I was rejected. I was told I wasn't good enough. And if we pause for a moment and we just think about that phrase, being not being good enough. There's a select. I'm going to use this part of your story if I can. Being excluded from a team, a very exclusive team, is not an indicator of who you are as a whole person. But sometimes that's the message we receive. That I can be excluded from a team or invited to, we're going to go our separate ways, as you shared.
Yeah.
Or even in a relationship. I share that experience with you having had a first marriage and going our separate ways, where we might think this is an indicator of who I am as a person, all of me. And wow, it's a powerful statement. It's a very convincing and compelling statement when that happens. And now as I say that, I'm thinking of that, I think it's a Disney DreamWorks or something like that movie, How to Train Your Dragon.
I love that movie.
To you listeners, viewers, if you haven't seen How to Train Your Dragon, please go watch it. There are a handful of movies that I watched after that, my divorce, my separation, and I'd watch with my little girl. And I would view those through the eyes either of a young child or as a dad, and seeing and predicting my child navigating life, the different things. And so there's a scene, that film's been out, that movie's been out long enough that if you haven't seen it, I'm not going to spoil, I'm not going to avoid spoiling for you. But there's a part where Hiccup is in an altercation of verbal kind of spat with his dad. And I think his dad's frustrated and disappointed and things like that. And he uses his arm, he motions to Hiccup his frustration. And Hiccup received that, and he even says, "You just pointed to all of me." And it's, maybe to my boy, it's, I'm frustrated with what you did today in this 10-minute period, right? Yeah. Or that choice that you made today in this season. But that's not your entire existence. But sometimes the child hears that. That's the message that they receive. And I can imagine receiving that as a college athlete. You're not on the team anymore. But a coach isn't necessarily like, but let me make sure that you understand your worth in every other area of your life. No, that's not their focus. And so I wish everybody had a rec therapist that they could just take with them all over the place. You mentioned like they can't take you in their pocket when they leave a treatment center. That's not fair, but it is what it is. And so just this thought, maybe to bring it back, this thought of we're going to endure pain. We're going to endure trial. We're going to endure hardship and disappointment and things like this. We don't have to do it alone. We don't have to run away from it. There's gray area in healing. And sometimes in life we want to pretend like it's all or nothing. It's one or the other. And there's a lot of that space in the middle that's the proving grounds, as I say. The proving grounds of recovery, of healing.
Yeah.
And we take it a day at a time. you know. I've played a little bit of softball recently, and there was a time where I was in a softball league with treatment, and a lot of competitiveness, but a lot of fun, a lot of connection.
Yeah.
And so again, that statement, that your hashtag, make real connections, just, wow. Not only am I connecting with healthy others, individuals who have similar goals, values, how we treat other people, that kind of thing, but also making better connections in my own brain, in my own mind.
Yes.
And recognizing where to let go of control, but where to invest our influence that we have. If I keep trying the same old thing that's not working, it doesn't mean I need to quit and do nothing, but maybe reallocate that effort in some other way to make that connection, from here today, this moment, to what's next on the journey.
Right.
And kind of expanding that analogy a little bit.
Yeah, I think when we think of connections, it often is with others.
Yeah.
And the whole concept of make real connections, ideally you have your tribe. You find your people that you can be raw with, you can be real with, and it feels connected. The truth is, we're meant to seek that, right? If we weren't meant to, we would be all born on separate islands, but we're not. We're born all together so we could figure it out, different personalities and everything. But the truth is, if you look for it, you'll find it. If you look for a way to connect with somebody, you will find it. If you look for a way to point out the differences, you'll find it. And I think that's the beauty in healing. I love your podcast name of Heal the Hurt, because we are not meant to be stuck, but we're not meant to, I guess it's the same concept, like sit in our own sludge, for lack of better words, our own mud. But sometimes we get there. Mm-hmm. Sometimes we get stuck, and that's when we're like, we don't know what to do. And whether it's a prayer that brings somebody, or that thought connection of, I'm going to read some different books, or this time I usually play 2 hours of video games. And instead I'm going to say, I'm going to take 10 minutes and go outside, and I'm just going to wave at cars that come by. And I'm going to feel that little bit of human to human connection with a wave and a smile, and they wave and smile back. I mean, sometimes we think, I don't have the skills to make these deep friends. I've never really had them. I didn't have them growing up. My parents didn't really connect with me. But it isn't just about others. It is about choosing it within ourselves, and choosing those thoughts, and being open to those different connections. And then it's like a golf swing. It's a teeny adjustment, and it opens up a huge door that we never knew would even be there.
I love that. And just that human piece, that just sitting and waving at cars as they pass by, like, this costs nothing. It doesn't take a great amount of time or energy.
Yeah.
Now, it might be something that's scary to us.
Definitely.
To put ourselves out there and to get out of our comfort zone. Absolutely. I will acknowledge that. But to be able to just make that contact, that eye contact, so much is talked about with our eyes, and when we feel depressed, we have a tendency to avoid eye contact, maybe to look down, to be more sullen. And what a cool thing it is to connect with somebody and try to impact their day, influence their day.
Yeah.
It's not, oh, you look sad. You shouldn't be. Yeah. You shouldn't be sad. So why don't you just stop it? That's not a thing. That's not realistic. But having a little bit of influence to do that good, right? To smile at somebody, to open the door for them. You look nice today, or hey, that was a funny joke, or whether you thought it was or not, I don't know.
Right.
My kids all the time are like, oh, Dad, you think you're so funny.
Another dad joke.
Yeah, and I am. I'm hilarious. No one else thinks it, but that doesn't matter because I think it.
Well, and that's what I wanted to say, Chris, is when we seek connection, the most important person to validate is ourself. Because if we are getting out of our comfort zone, it might be out of their comfort zone to receive it, which doesn't make it not a connection. It makes us human.
Yeah.
And an awkward moment, which is okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But ideally, we seek that internal validation, and that connection with ourselves opens up the other connections with others as well, because I'm no longer worried about what did that person think of me, or did they think I was silly, because we will never win that game.
Mm-hmm.
That is not between me and that other person. That is between me and my own brain. This is the connection that I have to make first. I have to love myself first. I have to approve and accept and humbly be okay that this is an imperfect person.
Mm-hmm.
And once I have that internal validation of, dang, I tried today and I had amazing moments. And that lady at Costco that had all those kids and was buckling them up and still had to go put her shopping cart away, I went up to her and I said, can I take your shopping cart for you? And her relief and gratitude, that was enough for me today, right? I chose to do that. Even if she was stressed and said, sure, fine, that's great. That was still good because I chose it. And so that is a very important part of us figuring out real connections is internal validation, fully accepting my imperfect, beautiful mess self.
Yeah. That made me think of, sometimes we do nice things for others to get the thank you, to get the accolades. And man, those are nice. Those are nice to be told, hey, I appreciated what you did. Like, that was nice. That was kind. That was, cool. But if that's why I do things, man, I'm going to get disappointed. I want to be the person. I'm saying it carefully. I want to be the person I want to be the kind of person who does things because it's the right thing to do, because it's in line with my value system, not because someone's watching, not because somebody's going to say thank you.
Yeah.
That can't be my fuel. The thank you cannot be my fuel. But there's something when we live within our value system, there's a natural payoff. There's a natural just like payday. There's a natural reinforcement that I'm doing the right things. And it's not like, well, let me do enough good things today so then tomorrow I don't have to, or tomorrow I can do all this whatever stuff. It's like it's this evolutionary, I'm moving in that direction. And again, today I can say, well, I know the difference between right and wrong, but I still mess up. I still do those wrong things. Not because I'm like, whatever, someday I'll get better. Someday I'll change. Someday I'll be good or whatever. I'm doing the best I can with what I've got in every given moment. And so I invite the listener and the viewer, give grace. Now, don't mail it in, but give grace. Do your best, but let go of that need to be perfect, that expectation of being flawless.
Yeah.
There's so many examples in our world today of not having room for a shortcoming.
Yeah.
Of not having room for I don't know, just a small speck of imperfection. We're human beings, I'm wanting to use all these analogies, but we'll have to do this in a future episode and talk more, about the application even of making real connections. And what I would love is from a listener, to comment or email in or something and say, this is my understanding of connections, or this is how I connect.
That'd be great.
With other people. And one of the things I remember in our work together, when people would talk about the way that they would make, what their understanding of connection was before, and then as they would begin to love themselves, as they would go away, as they would begin to love themselves and to value, to recognize their worth, the way they would seek connection in healthier, more beautiful, amazing, fulfilling ways that didn't lead to other pain down the road. Because again, here's my pain. I know how to make it go away for a minute, and it's effective. It works, right? But it doesn't solve.
Yeah.
It doesn't heal. It doesn't cure. And that's what we want. We want that resolution. And so we want to lean into that pain where we can tolerate it for a moment, to a certain extent. We all have limits, but lean into that, and it almost becomes this dance. Now I'm going to back off a little bit. Okay, I'm going to take a break. Now I'm going to lean back in. I can experience a little bit more, but I've got to come back out of it, give it a break, give me a break, let me rest, let me recuperate some, let me get some sleep, all the analogies, all the good things. And that pendulum will swing back and forth, and eventually it will come to a stop, meaning the pain's not there anymore. I love to use the analogy of scar tissue. The emotional wounds that we have that, and some might, even if I pause, people might start thinking about their own wounds. And those wounds that have started to heal, but there's an infection there because for whatever reason, it wasn't cleaned properly, it wasn't treated properly. We have these opportunities to do that healing. And sometimes when there's that wound and the treating professional is looking at it, assessing the damage, right? Going, we're going to have to scrub that, or we're going to have to put something on it,
Yeah.
And it's like, don't, leave it alone. You're hurting me.
Yeah.
And sometimes the healing process hurts. Sometimes it stings. Sometimes it feels like treating it hurts worse than the original pain, the original wound. And that's where my heart aches so much as a dad, as a therapist, as a person in trying to figure this world out, But part of that make real connections, part of the message and the energy and the spirit to me is we don't have to heal by ourselves.
Yeah.
And in fact, perhaps, I don't know that we can, at least very much.
Yeah.
I think we need other people for that, but we need the right people. We need to be picky with who we put in our world. So, yeah, but I'd love for a viewer to say, this is my idea of connection. This is how I do it. And, wow, that got me thinking, what Kami talked about, and this is what I'm going to do in my life. Or 6 months from now, this is what I've been doing. And wow, these results, it's different. My life is different. I'm seeing myself differently, My goodness, I'm having boundaries. Or,
Right.
Just that change, that evolution, I love.
Well, and I could talk for a long time about things that I've implemented little by little, but one thing that's been really powerful is making amends daily. And that's not just to other people, that's to myself as well. Because when I do that, I don't carry my baggage into the next day. I don't carry shame into the next day. I can say, all right, well, that was a rough moment.
Yeah.
Not a rough day. I don't really believe in rough days unless we hold on to moments and create that. But there are rough moments often. And sometimes we can look at them and say, I created that. And other times we can look at it and say, somebody else created that. But either way, I'm going to release it and move on. Because I think when we hold on to those hurts and those pains, they become harder to release, harder to scrub, like you were saying. I mean, if I have layers and layers and layers on a wound, then of course it's going to be painful, because I don't know if you guys have ever dealt with a sticky wound when you put gauze on it that's like non-sticky gauze and you try to pull it off. But I think that if we allow it, it's such a beautiful process to clean up the wound. And that's where we find these real connections too, these real people that want to help us clean up these wounds. We fight them because it hurts. But man, it's so beautiful when we trust that process and when we allow it. We're not supposed to be comfortable. I had a mentor one time. He said, you got to be comfortable being uncomfortable. And that's kind of how he said it. Mm-hmm. And I'm very grateful for that, because it is messy, and it's so nice that there's a reason for our suffering. It's not just that there's pain and hurt because everybody sucks and everybody's mean and everybody's out to get me. We are all victims, but we get to choose if we stand as a victim or if we stand as a victor. Mm-hmm. And I love that we get that choice every day, because it's not them trying to be evil. That's my belief. I believe that they're hurt people, not knowing how to not hurt people. Mm-hmm. But most people don't want to hurt people. It hurts them too.
Yeah.
And totally worth it.
I love that. There's do you want to share your poem?
I can. I totally can.
Does it feel right?
So I have written poetry since I was 16. 16 was my first poem. It's funny, I think about when I was a kid and when I wasn't outside or playing softball. I made slideshows for fun. I didn't have the internet or anything, but that's what I would do. And I think that got me into being creative with words. And so poetry was something that I did a little bit when I was 16. Again, that's when I struggled with friends and I kind of found myself and found my higher power. But I also wrote a lot of poetry through my separation and divorce. And so this one I wrote actually working at Steps. I was trying to figure out my connections and where I was seeking it. And so it's called I Am Enough. I'm going to read it. So it says, "For many years, I've cared what others think about me. I've backed up, slowed down, reversed, all because their validation was all I could see. I sought acceptance from anyone who'd give me attention. It's been my pattern. I've longed to be enough for everyone, which was never enough for me. It's a drug, a hit of enough for that moment. Then they're gone, then it's gone. Assumptions, people-pleasing, validating, you see, I got those things down. It's how I've survived, it's how I've got around. But not anymore. I see you now. Ignorance was bliss until I'm no longer ignorant. Once I know better, I gotta do better. So today and every day I make a choice. I choose to validate myself, to seek my approval, love, and acceptance from my God and my Savior. I get to not assume, not people please or say yes out of obligation. I choose my journey that God and I set out to do each day. I am enough. I am a daughter of God. Jesus Christ knows all my details, and that is enough for me."
Thank you.
Yeah, it was really beautiful saying it out loud, because I think all of us, no matter our vice, drugs, alcohol, pornography, validation, lust, it's a hard thing to admit. That's why it's step one. And so when I wrote it down and realized that I want to people please people and I want their validation, and I mean, I could have 10 people one day being like, "You're so great," and I still walked away thinking somebody didn't like me. And I'm really grateful that I was able to look in the mirror a little bit and say, I don't want this. Mm-hmm. This doesn't feel refreshed, renewed, relaxing, playful. It just felt stressful. I mean, because I can be the most beautiful, juicy peach and somebody won't like peaches.
Yeah.
And so understanding that external validation can be a gift, but it's not a core, is a beautiful lesson to learn, and continually, right? I'm still not perfect at it by any means, but I have that understanding that I can challenge it and make amends to myself that day and say, okay, I'm good.
I love that. I love that. Just the focus on the 10 that adore you, you know. We struggle to pay attention to that so often versus the one who might be allergic. You know, I'm going to use your peach analogy in the future. I like that a lot. How true. How true. Well, Kami, I know that we're going to visit like this again. You know, whether you're interested or not, we're going to hunt you down and continue our conversations. But I'm so grateful that we've stayed in touch and that you've come today to share parts of you and You told me that you're working on starting a podcast and bringing the energy, bringing the healing. And so I want you to take a couple of minutes and just kind of talk about what you're working on, and then tell people, if you will, where they can come follow you, come support you.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm actually going to throw in a little story real quick before I get there, because as I'm sitting here looking at Chris, I'm thinking about, there was one time we were at the ropes course and we're in this tower that's like 40 feet high, and this storm came in from nowhere. Do you remember this, Chris?
There were a few. So as you keep telling me, I might remember the exact.
It starts raining and snowing, and we're pretty much stuck up there holding on to different poles until the storm passes. And our clients were troopers. Like, they were incredible to just kind of stick out and go hide in the safe places. But many times on that tower, with crazy storms and winds coming and going, was so fun. And again, those are where real connections were made. Mm-hmm. Chris and I did a lot of treatment teams and meetings together and things like that. And it was like, man, this is cool. But recreating and playing and figuring out those connections made it deeper. You know, you can learn more about a person in an hour of play than a year of conversation, is a quote from Plato. And for me personally, I agree with that. So yeah, back to your question. So I'm in the very beginning stages. I just bought podcast supplies. But I want to interview, similar to how you do, interview many people of their thoughts of what a real connection is, what holds them back from those real connections, what pushes them to those real connections, and, you know, barriers and boulders that they have overcome to get there and feel safe. It's an important feeling for all of us. And so I want to do a podcast and have it audio as well as YouTube. And I'm in the process of buying the domain. I'm pretty sure it will be makerealconnections.org. And then I will have Instagram, Make Real Connections, and I will have a YouTube, probably Make Real Connections, and I'm really excited. So my goal is to start September 1st. So I'm going to take this summer I have 3 beautiful bonus daughters. So I'm going to take this summer and do that, as well as just try things out. It's been really neat though, ever since I felt this for the past 8 years, and I push it off because I didn't really want to do a podcast, or, you know, I like real in-person things. And so all my podcasts, my hope is to do them in person. You know, if it's somebody in New York and that's the only opportunity is via the internet, then we'll make it real as much as we can. But this last few months, it's just been hitting me pretty hard, and it's been cool because I've been out and about and just living life, and I'll look at somebody and just a conversation will start that I had no idea was even going to start up. Mm-hmm. And as I'm talking to them, I'm like, man, I want to interview them. Not for the internet, honestly, but the internet is such a beautiful tool for others to hear people's stories. People are so wise and incredible. Mm-hmm. And I think that the more that we can share real stories, the more people can be like, I can do that too. And feel good. Mm-hmm. You know, they're not just listening to, you know, songs that are about heartbreak and things like that. They can be like, hey, let's turn to these podcasts that's about healing and about real, and I can accept myself a little bit more because that's what I feed into my brain and my soul. So that's kind of my goal with Make Real Connections.
I love it.
My goal is to get 52, start doing it for a year, and then give myself feedback. Say, is this working? Is this working for my family? Is this working for myself? How? Just check it out. Yeah. So I'm really excited to do it. I feel like it will be a fun step, a growing step, maybe a little painful step. We'll see.
Well, there's pain. There's always pain along the way. There's learning opportunities, and we if we're paying attention, you know, we learn so much, and we evolve, we grow, we it's springtime and there's pruning that's happening in my backyard, and it's that concept of like, I'm going to cut this tree away. Like aren't I hurting it? Like it's always been a kind of a profound like interaction when I'm doing that. And it's, this tree's not talking back to me, or the shrubs or the plants, whatever it is, they're not talking back to me, but it's just this internal thing. Yeah. I'm letting go of something with something greater in mind, envisioned. And we can talk about so many different ways that applies in this world, in nature, in families and in our relationships. But yeah, I know you're going to crush it. It's going to be amazing.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I'm excited.
We'll have links and all of that available, and you guys go give her a follow. And my hope is, my dear hope is that we'll have you back here, and we'll just continue having these chats, as we go throughout this life. So thanks again, Kami, for being here, and thanks for being who you are.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Love it.
And to you listeners and you viewers, I know we say this all the time. You probably hear this from so many people in your life, but you're worth it. You matter so much. I will acknowledge that sometimes the people that we want to matter to, they just don't show up. And my heart aches when that's the case. But just know that maybe it's across an ocean, or it's a few states over in different time zones. There are people here in this office right now, in this room right now, that love you, that care for you, even if we're strangers. There is a collective love, a connective, collective compassion in this world. And the more that we connect to that, I think the more healing is possible. So you matter. Please don't suffer alone. Have a great rest of your day. Take care. Thanks for joining us on the Heal the Hurt podcast. Please like and subscribe to us on X at Heal the Hurt USA, or on Facebook and YouTube and Instagram at Heal the Hurt Nonprofit. This podcast is brought to you by Hobble Creek Behavioral Health and is produced and edited by Motley Sounds.